My daughter-in-law handed me an eviction notice on Christmas morning and told me I had 30 days to get out of my own house. What she didn't know was that I had been recording every conversation in my home for the past 6 months, and what I discovered would destroy her perfect little world forever. My name is Margaret Whitmore. I'm 68 years old, and I never imagined that the woman I welcomed into my family with open arms would orchestrate the most elaborate betrayal I've ever witnessed. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the moment my world began to crumble, piece by carefully orchestrated piece. It was December 25th, 2024, at exactly 7:43 a.m. when Sarah, my son, David's wife of 3 years, knocked on my bedroom door. I was still in my robe, having just finished wrapping the last of the Christmas presents I'd bought for my grandchildren, Emma, age 8, and little Tommy, just 6 years old, the same grandchildren I'd been raising half the time while their parents pursued their careers. Margaret, we need to talk, Sarah said, her voice carrying that cold, professional tone she used when she was about to deliver bad news to her real estate clients. She was still in her silk pajamas, the expensive kind that cost more than most people's grocery budget for a month. Can't it wait until after the children open their presents? I asked, glancing toward the living room where Emma and Tommy were still sleeping on the couch, having fallen asleep waiting for Santa the night before. No, it can't wait. She stepped into my bedroom, in my house, and closed the door behind her. In her manicured hand was a manila envelope, the kind that lawyers use for important documents. This is an eviction notice. You have 30 days to find somewhere else to live. I stared at her, certain I'd misheard. I'm sorry, what? You heard me. David and I have decided that this living arrangement isn't working anymore. We need our space to raise our children without, interference. The envelope felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in my hands. Official letterhead, legal language, my own address listed as the property in question. Sarah, this is my house. I've lived here for 37 years. David grew up in this house. I raised him in the room that's now Tommy's nursery. She smiled then. The same smile she'd given me when David first brought her home. Sweet, innocent, the kind that made you want to trust her with your deepest secrets. Actually, Margaret, if you check the deed, you'll find that David's name has been on this house for the past 2 years. As my husband, what's his is mine, and we've decided we want you out. My legs gave out. I sat down hard on the edge of my bed. The bed where my late husband Robert and I had shared 42 years of marriage before cancer took him 5 years ago. But David would never, he wouldn't do this to me, not without talking to me first. David agrees completely. In fact, it was his idea. She moved closer, towering over me now. You see, Margaret, we've been planning this for quite some time. We just needed the right moment, and Christmas seemed perfect. A new year, a fresh start. Where is David now? My voice cracked like autumn leaves. He's at his brother's house, explaining the situation to the family. Everyone's on board with this decision. They all agree that it's time for you to find your own place and stop depending on us for everything. The room started spinning. David's brother Marcus lived 2 hours away. If David was there, it meant this conversation was planned, orchestrated, timed, for maximum impact when I'd be most vulnerable, most alone. The children, I whispered, will be just fine, without their grandmother hovering over them constantly. You've been far too involved in their lives, Margaret. It's not healthy for them to be so attached to you. They need to bond with their actual parents, not their babysitter. The word hit me like a physical blow. For 3 years, I had been getting up at 5 a.m. to make breakfast for these children. I had walked Emma to school every day when Sarah was too busy with her real estate career. I had sat up all night with Tommy when he had pneumonia because Sarah didn't want to miss her yoga classes. I had given up my own social life, my own dreams of traveling in retirement, my own chance at finding companionship after Robert's death, all to help raise these precious children, and I was a babysitter. You have until January 25th, Sarah continued, checking her diamond watch, a gift I'd given her last Christmas, using money from my retirement fund. If you're not out by then, we'll have the sheriff remove you. And Margaret, don't even think about trying to turn David against me. He's made his choice. She left my room, closing the door with a soft click that sounded like a coffin lid closing. I sat there in the silence of Christmas morning, listening to the sounds of my grandchildren starting to wake up in the living room. Emma's excited whisper, "Tommy, wake up, Santa came." Tommy's giggle of pure joy. The same sounds that had filled this house when David was their age, when life made sense, when family meant something more than a business transaction. What Sarah didn't No, what none of them knew was that 6 months earlier, I had started to suspect something was wrong. Call it a mother's intuition, or maybe just the wisdom that comes with 68 years of life. But I had begun to notice things, whispered phone conversations that stopped when I entered a room, legal documents quickly shuffled away when I brought them coffee, David's growing distance, the way he'd stopped calling me Mom and started calling me Margaret like his wife did. So I had done something I never thought I'd have to do in my own home. I had installed recording devices. It started innocently enough. I told myself I was just being paranoid, that maybe I was losing my hearing and misunderstanding conversations. I bought a small digital recorder, the kind that could fit in a decorative bowl, and I placed it in the living room, just to test my own sanity. What I heard on those first recordings made me buy 5 more devices. For 6 months, I had been documenting every conversation that took place in my house when I wasn't present. Legal conversations about property transfers, planning sessions about how to get me out, discussions about my mental capacity and whether I was fit to live alone, and most devastating of all, conversations between David and Sarah about how much my house was worth and what they planned to do with the money once they sold it. But Christmas morning was just the beginning. As I sat there holding that eviction notice, I realized that everything I had recorded was about to become very, very important. The children's voices grew louder in the living room. "Grandma Maggie, come see what Santa brought." I wiped my tears, put on my robe, and walked out to face what might be my last Christmas morning in the home where I'd celebrated 43 previous Christmas mornings. Emma ran to me, throwing her small arms around my waist. "Grandma Maggie, Santa brought me the art set I wanted, and he brought Tommy the fire truck. Did you see?" I knelt down to their level, drinking in their faces, memorizing every freckle and dimple. "I see, sweetheart. Santa knows good children when he sees them." Sarah emerged from the kitchen, already dressed for the day in designer clothes that cost more than I spent on groceries in 3 months. She was carrying 2 cups of coffee, both for herself and David, who still hadn't returned from his mysterious trip to his brother's house. "Children, why don't you take your presents to your rooms and play? Grandma Maggie and I need to discuss some grown-up things." "But it's Christmas morning," Emma protested. "We always have pancakes together on Christmas morning. Grandma Maggie makes them special, with faces on them." Sarah's jaw tightened. "Not today, Emma. Grandma Maggie has some packing to do." The children looked confused. Tommy's lower lip started to tremble. "Is Grandma Maggie going on a trip?" "Something like that," Sarah said smoothly. "Now go to your rooms." After they left, reluctantly dragging their new toys, Sarah turned to me with that same cold smile. "I hope you understand that it's better for everyone if you don't make this difficult. The children will adjust. Children always do. And what exactly am I supposed to tell them? That their grandmother is abandoning them? You'll figure something out. You're good at stories." She paused, sipping her coffee. "Oh, and Margaret, David left instructions that you're not to discuss this situation with anyone in the family until after the holidays. We don't want to ruin Christmas for everyone else, of course. Isolate me, make sure I can't reach out for support, make sure I can't tell my side of the story before they've had a chance to control the narrative." But what Sarah didn't realize was that I had already reached out for support. 3 weeks earlier, when I began to suspect that something major was being planned, I had contacted my attorney, James Morrison. James had been Robert's best friend since college, and had handled our wills, the house paperwork, and all our legal affairs for decades. "Margaret," I'd told him during a secret meeting at his office, "I think my son and his wife are planning something. I need to know exactly what my legal rights are regarding my house and my grandchildren." James had listened with the patience of a man who'd dealt with family dramas for 40 years. "Let me research this thoroughly. In the meantime, if you suspect any illegal activity or fraud, document everything. Dates, times, conversations, documents, everything. I've been recording conversations in my own house. Is that legal?" James had smiled grimly. "Margaret, in this state, as long as you're in your own home, and you're a party to the conversation, or it's taking place in a common area of your residence, you have every right to record. In fact, I'd encourage you to continue doing so." So for 6 months, I had been building a case without even knowing I was building a case. Now, standing in my living room on Christmas morning, watching Sarah sip coffee in my house while delivering eviction papers for my property, I realized it was time to start fighting back. But first, I needed to understand exactly what I was fighting against. Over the next 3 hours, while Sarah made phone calls about coordinating the transition, and the children played quietly in their rooms. I reviewed 6 months of recorded conversations on my laptop. What I discovered was worse than I had imagined. Conversation from July 15, 2024. Sarah's voice. The property tax records show the house is worth at least $400,000, maybe more in this market. Once we get her out and sell it, we can put a down payment on that house in Riverside Estates. David's voice. I still feel weird about this. Sarah. She raised me in this house. It's been in our family forever. Sarah. David, your mother is 68 years old. She doesn't need a 4-bedroom house. She'd be much happier in a nice little apartment somewhere. Think about Emma and Tommy. Don't they deserve to grow up in a better neighborhood, with better schools? David, I guess you're right. But how do we get her to agree to move? Sarah, leave that to me. Conversation from August 22, 2024. Sarah, I talked to my lawyer friend, Rebecca. She says that since your name is on the deed, we have legal grounds to force the sale if your mother becomes difficult. David, when did my name get added to the deed? I don't remember signing anything. Sarah, remember when your mother had that minor stroke scare last year? While she was in the hospital, you signed some papers. I told you they were just medical power of attorney documents. But there might have been some property transfer papers in there too, for tax purposes. The recording went silent for a long moment. David, Sarah, please tell me you didn't trick me into signing something that would hurt my mother. Sarah, I didn't trick you into anything, David. I protected our family's future. Sometimes adults have to make hard decisions for the greater good. My hands were shaking as I sorted through months of recorded conversations. Each one was worse than the last. Sarah discussing my declining mental state with her friends, planning to use it as justification for moving me into assisted living. David slowly being manipulated into believing that I was becoming a burden, that I was too dependent on them, that the children would be better off without their interfering grandmother. But the worst conversation was from just 2 weeks ago. December 10, 2024. Sarah, Rebecca says, we need to be careful about how we handle this. If Margaret fights back, she could claim elder abuse or manipulation. We need to make sure she chooses to leave voluntarily. David, how do we do that? Sarah, we make her life here uncomfortable. We stop including her in family decisions. We make it clear that she's not wanted. Eventually, she'll get the message and leave on her own. If she doesn't, then we use the eviction route, but we make it look like we're doing her a favor, helping her find independence. Unknown voice, Rebecca, I assumed. The key is documentation. Every interaction should be framed as concern for her well-being. You're not kicking her out. You're helping her transition to a more appropriate living situation for someone her age. Sarah, perfect. And if she tries to turn the family against us, Rebecca, by then, you'll have established a pattern of concerning behavior, confusion, paranoia, inability to live independently. Who's going to believe the accusations of a confused elderly woman over a loving son and daughter-in-law, who are just trying to do what's best? I had to stop the recording. I ran to the bathroom and vomited. They had been planning this for months, maybe years. Every kind gesture, every "we're concerned about you, Mom" conversation, every suggestion that I might want to consider downsizing. It had all been manipulation, a long, careful campaign to isolate me, discredit me, and steal my home. But I wasn't confused, I wasn't paranoid, and I wasn't going down without a fight. I spent the rest of Christmas Day acting as normal as possible while my mind raced through possibilities. David came home around dinner time, avoiding eye contact with me but hugging the children with what seemed like genuine affection. At least, I hoped it was genuine. At this point, I wasn't sure what was real anymore. Dad, Grandma Maggie, is going on a trip, Emma announced during our quiet Christmas dinner. When is she coming back? David's fork clattered against his plate. What did you tell them? He asked Sarah. Nothing specific, just that there might be some changes coming. I told them the truth, I said quietly, that sometimes adults have to make difficult decisions, and we all have to be very brave. The look that passed between David and Sarah was loaded with meaning. I was being warned to stay on script. After dinner, while Sarah gave the children their baths, David finally approached me. We stood in the kitchen where I had packed his school lunches for 12 years, where I had taught him to make scrambled eggs, where we had celebrated his graduation from college with a cake I'd baked from scratch. Mom, he began, but his voice cracked. Margaret, I want you to know that this isn't easy for any of us, isn't it? I looked at my son, really looked at him. When had he become a stranger? When had the little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms become someone who could hand me an eviction notice on Christmas morning? We think this might be best for everyone. You've been working so hard, taking care of us, taking care of the kids. Don't you want some time for yourself? Some independence. The words sounded rehearsed, coached. David, I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer me honestly. Do you remember what you signed when I was in the hospital last year? His face went pale. There were a lot of papers. Sarah handled most of the details. Do you remember signing papers that put your name on the deed to this house? The silence stretched between us like a chasm. David, I said softly, I've been your mother for 34 years. I've never lied to you. I've never manipulated you. I've never asked you for anything except to be a good man and a good father. I'm asking you now, is this really what you want? Or is this what someone has convinced you that you want? For just a moment, I saw my son again, the real David, the one who used to bring me dandelions from the yard and call them beautiful flowers for the most beautiful. Mom, the one who had cried at his father's funeral and told me he'd always take care of me. Double quotes, he started, then shook his head. It's complicated, Mom. Margaret, there are things you don't understand about our finances, about what Emma and Tommy need for their future. What I understand is that 6 months ago, your wife started recording our conversations and building a case to have me declared mentally incompetent. What I understand is that she's been planning this for years, waiting for the right moment to take everything I've worked for. David stepped backward as if I'd struck him. That's not true. Sarah wouldn't do that. She loves you. She's always said you were like a mother to her. I pulled out my phone and played the recording from August 22nd. Sarah's voice filled the kitchen, crystal clear. I didn't trick you into anything, David. I protected our family's future. Sometimes adults have to make hard decisions for the greater good. David's face went through a series of emotions: confusion, recognition, denial, and finally, a dawning horror. Where did you get that? I recorded it. In my own home. It's completely legal. I stopped the playback. David, there are hours of recordings, months of conversations about how to manipulate me, how to steal my house, how to turn you against me. Do you want to hear more? You've been spying on us. I've been protecting myself from people who were planning to destroy my life. There's a difference. Sarah's voice carried from upstairs. David, can you help me get Tommy into his pajamas? David looked toward the stairway, then back at me. I need to think about this. You have until January 25th to think about it. After that, according to your wife, the sheriff will be here to remove me from my own home. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I spent the hours organizing every piece of evidence I had collected. 6 months of recordings, transcribed and cataloged, copies of legal documents that had been accidentally left where I could see them, photos of Sarah's handwritten notes about property values and legal strategies, screenshots of text messages between Sarah and her lawyer friend that I had glimpsed when Sarah left her phone, unlocked on the kitchen counter. By morning, I had built a case that would impress a prosecutor, but more importantly, I had built a plan. On December 26th, while David went to work and Sarah took the children shopping with money from the joint account that used to be just my account, I drove to James Morrison's office. Margaret, you look terrible. What's happened? I told him everything, showed him everything. James listened with growing astonishment and anger. This is fraud, he said finally, possibly elder abuse, definitely theft by deception. The property transfer alone, if David was deceived about what he was signing, could be grounds for criminal charges. I don't want to send my son to jail. James, I want my house back, and I want my family back. If that's possible, it's possible. But it's going to require some very careful maneuvering. James leaned back in his chair. Margaret, I need to ask you something difficult. Are you prepared for the possibility that David might choose Sarah over you, that you might lose your son in the process of fighting this? I thought about Emma and Tommy, growing up believing their grandmother had abandoned them. I thought about David, living with the guilt of what he'd done, even if he'd been manipulated into doing it. I thought about Sarah, continuing to destroy families for her own gain. James, 5 years ago, when Robert was dying, he made me promise him something. He made me promise that I would never let anyone take advantage of me just because I was a widow. He said that I was stronger than I knew, and that if anyone ever tried to hurt me or hurt our family, I should fight back with everything I had. James smiled. Then we fight. The plan we developed was elegant in its simplicity. We would use Sarah's own tactics against her, document everything, build a case, and then, when the time was right, we would reveal just enough evidence to make it clear that we knew everything, but offer a solution that would give everyone a way out while protecting me. But first, we needed to understand exactly what we were dealing with. James hired a private investigator to look into Sarah's background. What we discovered was disturbing but not surprising. Sarah had been married before, to a man 15 years older than her. He had owned a successful restaurant. Within 2 years of their marriage, he had signed over half the business to her. Within 3 years, she had forced him out of the business entirely and sold it. The man had died 6 months later, alone and penniless. There had been another relationship with a widower who owned a small chain of hardware stores. Same pattern: marriage, property transfers, isolation from family and friends, and eventually, complete financial ruin. Sarah was what the investigator called a marriage predator. She targeted men with assets and older family members who might interfere with her plans. She was very good at what she did. The good news, James explained, is that now we understand her pattern. The bad news is that your son is just her latest victim, and you're the obstacle she needs to remove. What about the children? What happens to Emma and Tommy in all this? That's what we're going to find out. On December 30th, I implemented the first phase of our counters. I started acting confused. It began at breakfast. Sarah, dear, I can't seem to remember where I put my coffee. Have you seen it? The coffee cup was in my hand. It's right there, Margaret, Sarah said. But I could see the wheels turning in her head. Oh, silly me, I laughed. I don't know where my mind goes sometimes. Throughout the day, I forgot conversations we'd had an hour earlier. I misplaced my keys and found them in the refrigerator. I called Emma by Tommy's name, and then seemed confused when she corrected me. By evening, Sarah was on the phone with her lawyer friend. Rebecca, I think the situation might be resolving itself faster than we thought. Margaret's showing signs of serious cognitive decline. Today she couldn't remember where she put things. She was calling the children by the wrong names. I think we might have grounds for immediate conservatorship. I recorded every word. The next day, January 1st, 2025, Sarah called a family meeting. David, his brother Marcus, and Marcus's wife Janet came over for dinner. The children were sent to their rooms early. I'm worried about Margaret, Sarah began, her voice full of false concern. She's been showing signs of confusion, memory loss, disorientation. Yesterday she couldn't even remember basic conversations we'd had. Marcus looked genuinely concerned. Mom, are you feeling all right? You seem different. I played my part perfectly. Different? I feel fine. Although I paused, looking confused. I'm sorry, Marcus. Remind me why everyone's here. Are we celebrating something? The look that passed between David and Sarah was exactly what I'd expected. Sarah was thrilled. David looked sick. Mom, David said gently, we're here because we're all concerned about you. We think you might need some help. Help with what? I asked, tilting my head like a confused elderly woman. Janet, Marcus's wife, leaned forward. Margaret, honey, do you remember the conversation we had at Christmas about you finding a new place to live? A new place? I looked around the room as if seeing it for the first time. But this is my home. Robert and I built this home. Why would I need a new place? Sarah jumped in. Margaret, you've been having some memory issues lately. We think you might be happier somewhere with more support. Somewhere with people who can help you if you get confused. Confused about what? Like yesterday, when you couldn't remember where you put your coffee cup. Or when you called Emma Tommy. Little things like that. I let my face crumple with fear and confusion. I don't remember that. Did I really do that? David reached across the table and took my hand. Mom, it's okay. These things happen as we get older. But we want to make sure you're safe. Safe from what? Sarah's voice was gentle, loving, the voice of a caring daughter. Safe from confusion, from accidents, from being alone when you might need help. We've been looking into some beautiful assisted living communities. Places where you'd have your own apartment but with nurses nearby. If you need anything, would I still see the children? Of course, David said quickly. All the time, whenever you want. Sarah's smile was triumphant. We're all just trying to do what's best for you, Margaret, because we love you. I looked around the table at these people who were discussing my future like I wasn't even there. And I made my decision. That sounds very nice, I said in a small, uncertain voice. If you think it's best. After they left, Sarah was practically glowing. This is perfect, David. She's agreeing voluntarily. There won't be any legal complications. I still feel like we're railroading her, David said quietly. David, did you see her tonight? She couldn't even remember why everyone was here. She needs professional care. We're doing the right thing. What Sarah didn't know was that I had contacted James immediately after the family meeting, and he had been listening to the entire conversation through an open phone line. Margaret, he said when I called him back later that night, that performance was Oscar-worthy. But are you sure you want to go through with this? James, they're planning to put me in a nursing home and steal my house. At this point, I have nothing left to lose. Actually, you have everything to gain. Let me explain what's going to happen next. The plan was this. I would continue to play confused and cooperative while James worked behind the scenes to prepare our legal response. Sarah would rush to get me placed in assisted living as quickly as possible, which meant she would make mistakes. Desperate people always make mistakes. Sure enough, on January 3rd, Sarah had already scheduled tours of 3 different facilities. Margaret, I think you'll love Sunset Manor, she said as we drove to our first appointment. They have activities every day, and the dining room looks out over a beautiful garden. Sunset Manor was actually quite nice, which surprised me. The staff was professional, the facilities were clean, and the residents seemed reasonably happy. For a moment, I almost wondered if Sarah was right. Maybe I would be happier here. Maybe I was becoming a burden to my family. But then I heard Sarah talking to the admissions coordinator. The family is very concerned about her safety, Sarah was saying. She's been having episodes of confusion, memory loss. Yesterday she forgot she was holding a cup of coffee. We're worried she might hurt herself if she continues living alone. Does she have any assets that would need to be managed? The coordinator asked. She owns her home, but we're planning to sell that to help pay for her care here. Her son has power of attorney, so he'll be handling all the financial arrangements. Power of attorney, another document I'd never signed, never agreed to. The coordinator nodded sympathetically. It's so difficult when families have to make these decisions, but you're doing the right thing. Independence is wonderful, but safety comes first. I signed the admissions paperwork with a shaky hand, playing the part of a confused old woman who was grateful for her family's care and guidance. My move-in date was scheduled for January 15th, 10 days before the eviction notice deadline. That night, Sarah opened a bottle of champagne. 2 new beginnings, she toasted David. For all of us. David didn't look like he was celebrating, but he drank the champagne. What Sarah didn't realize was that January 15th was going to be a very different kind of new beginning than she had planned. James had been busy during the week I'd been touring assisted living facilities. The private investigator had uncovered more details about Sarah's previous marriages, including financial records that showed a clear pattern of elder abuse and asset theft. More importantly, we'd discovered that Sarah had never actually divorced her first husband. He hadn't died 6 months after losing his business. He was still alive, living in a nursing home in Arizona, penniless and suffering from what appeared to be medically induced dementia. Sarah was a bigamist. Her marriage to David was invalid, which meant she had no legal claim to any property, no standing to make medical decisions, and no authority to place me anywhere. But we weren't going to reveal that information yet. We were going to let her dig her own grave a little deeper first. On January 10th, 5 days before my scheduled move to Sunset Manor, Sarah made her biggest mistake yet. She invited her lawyer friend, Rebecca, over for dinner to finalize the arrangements. I served them a lovely pot roast with all the trimmings, playing the role of the confused but grateful mother-in-law, who was thankful for their help in managing her life. After dinner, while I supposedly napped in my chair in the living room, they had their planning session at my kitchen table. The assisted living facility is going to cost about $4,000 a month, Rebecca said, reviewing paperwork. With the sale of the house, she'll have enough to cover costs for about 8 years. After that, she'd be eligible for Medicaid. Sarah nodded. And the house sale. I've already contacted a realtor. In this market, you should be able to get $450,000, maybe more. After paying off the small remaining mortgage and the realtor fees, you're looking at about $400,000 clear. Perfect. David and I can put that toward the Riverside Estates house, plus have enough left over for the children's college funds. There's just one potential complication, Rebecca said. If Margaret ever gets a competent lawyer and contests any of this, she could cause problems. The property transfer, the power of attorney documents, her placement in assisted living. If she can prove she was coerced or manipulated, she could potentially get everything reversed. Sarah waved dismissively. Look at her. Rebecca. She can barely remember what day it is. By the time she's been in assisted living for a few months, her condition will have deteriorated even more. No lawyer is going to take the case of a confused elderly woman making wild accusations against her loving family. What about the recordings you mentioned? The ones she supposedly made, probably imaginary. Another sign of her declining mental state. Or, if they're real, they're probably just random conversations taken out of context. Nothing that would hold up in court. Rebecca gathered her papers. All right, I'll have everything finalized by Monday. The house goes on the market Tuesday, and she moves into Sunset Manor on Wednesday. By February, this will all be behind you. They shook hands like business partners closing a deal, which, I suppose, they were, after Rebecca left. I continued to nap while Sarah and David cleaned up the dinner dishes. I still can't believe how cooperative she's being, David said. I thought she'd put up more of a fight. I told you, David, she's not the woman she used to be. The confusion, the memory issues, they're taking their toll. She knows she needs help, even if she can't articulate it. I just hope we're doing the right thing. Sarah's voice hardened just slightly. David, we've been over this. Your mother is becoming a burden on our family. Emma and Tommy need a stable environment, not one where they're constantly worried about their confused grandmother. You need to focus on your career, not on managing an elderly woman who can't take care of herself. And I need to focus on building our future, not on babysitting someone who should have made these decisions for herself years ago. You're right. I know you're right. It's just ... Just what? It's just that sometimes, when she looks at me, I see the old mom, the one who raised me, who taught me everything I know about being a decent person. And I wonder if she knows what we're doing to her. Sarah's laugh was cold. David, if she understood what we were doing to her, don't you think she'd be fighting back? Oh, Sarah, if you only knew. On Sunday, January 12th, 3 days before my scheduled move to Sunset Manor, I played my final card. I called a family meeting. Everyone came. David and Sarah, Marcus and Janet. Even David's sister Lisa, who drove up from San Diego with her husband, Tom. I had asked them all to come because I had something important to discuss about my future. They gathered in my living room, the same room where I had celebrated David's first steps, his first day of school, his graduation, his wedding to Sarah, the same room where Robert and I had spent countless evenings planning our children's futures and dreaming about grandchildren. I stood at the front of the room, looking frail and uncertain, holding a manila folder in my trembling hands. I want to thank you all for coming, I began in a quavering voice, and I want to thank you all for caring so much about my well-being. I know that the decision to help me move to Sunset Manor wasn't easy, and I want you all to know that I understand you're doing what you think is best for me. Sarah beamed. David looked uncomfortable, but relieved. Marcus and Janet smiled sympathetically. Lisa reached over and squeezed my hand.